Dr. Shiva, welcome to the program. I just tried to pick up the phone. I think you might have tried to call me, or maybe Manju had tried to call me on the other line. But thank you for joining us. I was in a panic trying to fill in for you.
Okay, I'm sure you did a good job.
Well, I have to tell you, the information that you had on the absolute proof video, and I saw another video about a month and a half ago that you did with two of your friends who are involved in data research and systems engineering, where you showed the anomalies that had happened. And it seems to me like it was in the state of Wisconsin, but it may have been in Michigan. I'm not sure. Okay. All righty.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to give you as much time as you want to spend with us, but I want you to talk about, first of all, what occurred in your election when you ran for Senate in Massachusetts, because you got a really, really good insight into how the system gets manipulated in Massachusetts, and then you got involved when the presidential election went the way it did. Yours was a primary election that you saw skewed so bad, correctly?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. One thing, Dan, are you recording this also, right?
Yes,
Yes.
This is being recorded.
If you are, in this interview, if you can give it to me, I'll also stream it, afterwards.
Sure, we will.
Okay. Yeah, because I think what I want to, I've been, let me start this way to everyone listening. This is what people need to understand. In the United States, we do not have elections, we have selections. So I'm going to tell the punchline, as we would do in science, what the thesis statement is, and I'm going to back into and prove that. We have selections, we do not have elections. For many, many years, the mainstream media has been always pointing at other countries as quote unquote third world countries, be it, dictatorships, Venezuela and China and Russia and, failed democracies, Africa, India, wherever you want to put it. And what I want to assert is what I've unfortunately discovered is that this country has becoming, Massachusetts, I'll tell you right now, is a third world state. And this country is becoming that, or if not that already. And maybe it's perhaps for us to assume that's where we are. So we have an opportunity to actually dig ourselves out. But that's the thesis statement. And for me to say that, it's quite unfortunate for me to say that, because my parents left India. We grew up as what we're called low caste, untouchables, which means the lowest of the low, to come to this country primarily for a couple of reasons. One was because of the fairness and the equality this country offered, but the other person was the concept of one person, one vote, right? These were two things that compelled my parents from their extraordinary circumstances to come here. And that's what motivated me to work hard, to do well in school, I was a research fellow at the age of 14, where I created the first email system in Newark, New Jersey. Before I came to MIT, ended up getting 4 degrees, started a bunch of companies, and still continue to work hard, and decided that it was important that other kinds of voices be in the American landscape of politics, maybe an engineer, maybe a scientist. And that's why I decided to run. In 2018, we ran. And our biggest enemy, even though I ran initially as a Republican, was not the Democrats, but the Republicans, the Republican GOP. So the other thesis statement is everyone should dump this stuff in the garbage, that Republicans versus Democrats, left versus right. This is a fake dialectic. And as long as people fall into this, nothing will happen, and you're caught in the enemy's clutches, because they want you to practice WWF wrestling, and they want you to watch the Kabuki theater, which is what took place over the last 4 years. So in 2018, when I ran against Elizabeth Warren, by the way, no one from the quote unquote Trump campaign supported us when they should have. We're the ones who went hard against Warren. We're the ones who forced her to take the DNA test. We ran as Republicans. The Massachusetts GOP in 2018 ran a guy who had photoshopped a picture with Trump. There's 3 hands in the picture. And that was done to convince Trumpers that this guy was a Trump candidate. You follow? So we were forced to run as independents. We got 100,000 votes. We're the ones who exposed Warren as having low integrity, or no integrity. And we got 100,000 votes. That was in 2018, 5 times more than any independent candidate ever in Massachusetts history. In 2020, we decided to run as Republicans in the primary. And we ended up having 3,000 volunteers. which is quite extraordinary. You know, over 10,000 lawn signs, 20,000 bumper stickers. We raised a couple of million, all bottoms up. People from all over the country sent us $5, $10, because we were hitting hard at the fundamental issue of the freedom was being denied. And when you deny freedom, you can't get to truth. And without truth, you can't understand real problems to get to health. And without health, you don't have the infrastructure for yourself personally or, you know, broadly to fight for freedom, truth, freedom, and health. That slogan, which was more than just a slogan, was founded on very fundamental scientific principles, caught hold, and we were everywhere, Dan. The word in Massachusetts, when it was DrSHIVA, we had at least 90–95% visibility, was the word landslide, was everywhere. The Massachusetts GOP, again, the Republicans, were our real enemies. They found some fool to run who was nowhere to be found. No campaign organization, no lawn signs, no bumper stickers, nothing. We went to every city, and the word, again, I keep mentioning, was landslide. September 1st, 2020 was a Republican primary, and I was campaigning all the way until, 7 p.m. Well, we had our party set, and we see the results come in. In the Massachusetts counties, in Franklin County, which is predominantly all hand-counted ballots, we win there by 10 points. And in every other county, it was 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40. Here's a guy who grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, who gets 60-40 in all black, Brockton, okay? In all Hispanic Lawrence. This guy was like a man for all seasons. Impossible. The night before the election, the Secretary of State, whose name is the Prince of Darkness, completely corrupt guy, Bill Galvin, he said only 150,000 people are going to vote in the Republican primary, when in every primary, at least 260,000 people have voted. So because he knew our election was bringing out people, 60% of our campaign were people who never voted, Dan. We were really bringing out the American masses who were looking for a real candidate, which was us, which was me. So what we saw on election night was, it's like ridiculous. 60-40, 60-40 in every county that was hand counted votes. And in the only county that was predominantly, machine counted, and in the only county that was hand counted, I win by 10 points. And it was quite extraordinary. So my concession speech on September 1st, 2020 was, election fraud took place in third world Massachusetts. And I said, I'm glad we have the Second Amendment. Okay. So that was my concession speech. By September 9th, I was starting to receive lots of people telling me, hey, do you know, a lot of my close associates were saying the only way you're going to lose, Shiva, is if there's election fraud. I go, that doesn't take place in America, That was probably my naivete. But by September 9th, I had discovered that starting in 2002, the voting machines in the United States had a feature starting with the grandfather voting machines, the Diebold systems, called a weighted race feature, which means they can multiply votes using an algorithm, okay? And for that matter, our votes are actually stored as decimals, which is even more profoundly amazing. That means it's not one person, one vote. It could be 1.1 or 0.6 or 0.7 votes. And these weighted race algorithms, so if you got 1,000 votes, this is how unbelievable it is. And it's in page 2-126 of the Diebold manual, clearly says it in black and white, that they have an algorithm, which you get 1,000 votes, I get 1,000 votes, your votes could be multiplied by 2. So you end up getting 2,000 votes, Dan, and I end up getting, let's say, my votes get multiplied by 0.6. So I end up getting 600 votes. It's in the manual. All right. This is not conspiracy. It's in the manual, a feature that can allow votes to be fractionalized or multiplied, which means a feature that denies one person, one vote, which was a very important clarification of the 14th Amendment that took place in 1964 by Justice Earl Warren, clarifying one person, one vote. Okay. So we don't have that once you have electronic voting machines. So what we found was starting September 9th, I'd figured this out. And on September 9th, I went to the Secretary of State and I issued a FOIA, public records request. And I wanted something very important called the ballot images. Now, why are they important? Well, in all the electronic voting machine counties or precincts, they literally take a paper ballot and it gets scanned. When it gets scanned, Dan, it gets converted to an image. All right. So the paper ballot is used to generate an image. That image is what is then counted by the voting machine. In the case of a hand-marked paper ballot where a human being counts it, two people actually look at it and they're tabulating, which means a paper ballot is reviewed by a human. But in the case of electronic voting machines, a paper ballot is converted to a photographic image or some image in the computer. The paper ballot is set aside. What is counted is that ballot image. Okay? Now, according to 52 USC 20701, the rule, it was a previous code that was converted to that in 1974. Any records generated is a keyword, in connection with the federal election must be preserved for 22 months. Right. Well, the ballot image didn't exist. It was generated. It is the ballot, which is used for counting. As far as anyone with common sense is, what is counted is the ballot. The ballot image is what the computer scans to figure out the ellipses, right? So on September 9th, I issued a FOIA. In fact, I went physically with two of my volunteers with a camera to the Secretary of State, and I said, I want the ballot images. And by the way, the ballot images are supposed to be preserved. You could put all the ballot images on Massachusetts in a small hard drive about this big for $500.
Right.
It's not that expensive. So the guy behind the counter says, we don't have those ballot images. We turned that feature off. Okay?
Oh, no. Wow.
And so I didn't say anything. I gave them my FOIA. They have 10 days to respond. On September 25th, 24th, the Secretary, by the way, between September 1st to September 24th, on Twitter, I've never been thrown off Twitter. I've talked about all controversial things, forced vaccinations, started, everything you can imagine, right? Hitting Warren viciously. September 1st to September 24th, I was talking about, I said election fraud took place in Massachusetts. I said ballot images have been deleted. Ballot images is a violation of federal law. Twitter didn't touch me. But on September 24th, what happened was the Secretary of State writes to me, to be specific, the election director, and says, we don't have the ballot images. We are prohibited from saving them according to Massachusetts law. So I write back, Ms. Tassinari, that's the name of the election director, can you please show me the Massachusetts statute which allows you not to do this? She writes back another email saying we have the paper ballots, but we don't have the ballot images. I write back and I say, you violated federal law. I said, this election is null and void because the ballot images are what are used for tabulation, and tabulation is fraud. If you can't tabulate, what did you tabulate on? You didn't tabulate the paper, you had to use the images. Those 4 emails, Dan, I put up on my Twitter account, putting them all, and a threaded tweet of those 4 images, the email conversation, which is public information. Bam, I was banned. Remember, quote unquote, we allegedly lost a primary. So I moved my campaign in the general elections to a write-in. We had such profound support bottoms up. And we distributed, starting on September 1, we put out 1 million of these cards. I don't know if you can see these.
Oh,
a million. Okay. The Trump campaign was always calling it voter fraud. We called it election fraud. So our volunteers were out there in the rain and the snow putting these out. Okay. So what happens is that I get thrown off Twitter in the middle of my federal election campaign. And a organization called Lead Stories, who does a hit job on me, they're supposedly a fact-checking organization. They do a saying, oh, Dr. Shiva is lying. He's spreading election and there were no ballots deleted. I never said ballots. I said ballot images, which are the ballots on electronic voting machines. But in that article, in the hit job article, they did something very valuable for me. They said, we talked to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State said they contacted Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yes. So now listen to what I'm saying. We keep hearing big tech, big tech, big tech. That's just a ruse. The real issue is the government. The government works with big tech. This is why they haven't gone after Section 230. All these politicians need Facebook. They need Google, okay, to shut out, real rabble-rousers like myself, okay? So the government of Massachusetts contacted Twitter to throw me off because I was spreading election misinformation. What was the misinformation? I was sharing the fact that the government of Massachusetts had deleted ballot images, which is a violation of federal law. So I looked at that. I couldn't get a lawyer I said, okay, I can't go after Twitter. Section 230 will take forever. Election integrity, I don't know enough about, but I do know the First Amendment. So I said this was one of the most profound violations of the First Amendment, because this is saying that government speech can supersede political speech. I'm a political candidate. This is the foundations of the First Amendment. So I file a lawsuit. I had to do the brief all myself, Dan. And the judge, first victory, the judge gave us a hearing. There were two parts of the lawsuit. One is a lawsuit, me demanding about $1.2 billion, very large sum of money. But the other part of the lawsuit was what I called, I need an immediate restraining order, Your Honor, because my election is taking place and the Secretary of State could continue calling Twitter to throw me off, right? That's called an emergency restraining order. Mm-hmm. Judges don't like to give those hearings, and he gave me the hearing. Number one victory. Number two, it ended up being a 4-hour hearing with me against 3 lawyers, okay? In federal court, which I've never been in. So in federal court, I had to become my own lawyer, and I represented the fact that there's an issue called, there's a precedent called cat's paw liability. Cat's paw liability is very famous. It comes from the Aesop's fable story where you have a monkey which is trying to steal a chestnut off a fire. He doesn't want to get his fingers burned, so he convinces a monkey to do it. The monkey, a cat, the cat gets his fingers burned and the monkey runs off with the chestnut, okay? So the monkey induced the cat to do the stealing. So this has been in case law where employee 1 induces an employer to fire employee 2. Employee 2 files a lawsuit not against the employer, but against the monkey in this case, which is employee 1, and they win. It's called cat's paw liability, okay? So I said, look, it wasn't Twitter who threw me off. Twitter was the cat. The monkey was the Secretary of State. They induced Twitter, and that's a violation of the First Amendment. Well, the judge listens to my argument, and he gives me a victory. He orders the restraining order terms, which is that he orders the Secretary of State to stop contacting Twitter. But more importantly, what came out in that 4-hour testimony was actual black and white transcript where the Secretary of State election director is admitting she called Twitter. She admits that they have a trusted Twitter partnership. Wow. And when they complain, Twitter jumps. They also admitted in federal court testimony and sworn testimony, they contacted a woman called Amy Cohen, this woman, Michelle Tassinari, who's a state election director. Now, who is Amy Cohen? She's the executive director of the Uber organization of all state election directors called National Association of State Election Directors, NASED. Well, why is NASED important? Well, all the state election directors, that's their community. These are the people who are the ones who certify electronic voting machines. Okay? They're the ones who are certifying voting machines to delete ballot images, to put the weighted race feature in. And who funds the NASED? The Rockefeller brothers, the Murdochs, the Pew Charitable Foundation, and so on. So a nonprofit who you and I didn't elect is owning, first of all, centralizing this process, right? You could argue. And NASED was contacted by Michelle Tassinari, the state election director, who independently called Twitter. They did a hot call to her, and they even have a much more closer relation with Twitter. And they called Twitter to also have me knocked off. So you have the government contacting Twitter to throw off a federal election candidate off Twitter because he was exposing their violation of federal law. The judge in his analysis said, remember, judges only will give you the terms of the restraining order if they think you're going to win the whole case. And the judge said, more than likely, Dr. Ayadure will win his full case to show that state action was involved. This is a precedential lawsuit. No media covered it, Dan. Tucker Carlson on the right, no one, because they're all part of it. Wow. We have the not so obvious establishment in this country on the left and the right. So that lawsuit has not been dismissed, unlike every lawsuit that these so-called lawyers filed for Trump. The second lawsuit I filed was we found out, because I'm a mathematician, because I do pattern analysis my whole life, I use my own skills to show that they had multiplied my votes by 0.666 and my opponents by 1.2. How did we find that? Well, we found the source of the real crime scene in one county, in Suffolk County, where we see this up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down pattern, which is supposed to be a random pattern, where you see nine strings of high-low, where the number of odd number of votes to even number of votes is 2 to 1, which is and when we did the math analysis, that can only occur in 1 in 100,000 elections. Okay. That lawsuit has still yet to be unrebutted. And in that lawsuit, I'm asking for decertification of the US Senate election. And I'm asking for hand counted of the Republican primary September 1. They filed nearly 200 pages of opposition to dismiss my lawsuit in the second election. Guess what? The next victory I got, the judge denied their motion to dismiss. Every one of Trump's lawsuits have been dismissed. So my point here is we're going after the real crime scene, which are these computer algorithms, and we're saying that denies one person, one vote. So here you have a one person, one vote lawsuit, and here you have a fundamentals of the First Amendment lawsuit of the government contacting big tech. So that's what we have. And my lawsuits have not been dismissed. And the egregious way in how the press does not cover this, but they will cover all the failed lawsuits.
Right, right.
That's what this is about. So that's where we're at. And part of what we're doing now, Dan, is to educate people. And if I want to share my screen, if that's all right, is
sure.
We want to educate people that we have to realize in the last 4 years, here's my announcement. I voted for Trump. I gave him money, right? Supported him, as everyone knows. But when I look at the last 4 years and I remove my rose-colored glasses, I have to apply science and engineering science. And this is what I see in my analysis, is that Hillary never got locked up. No, nothing was filed against Hillary. This woman smashed a hard drive, right? She put a server in her home. She had whatever agents, do dossiers. Not one thing was done. Right after Trump gets in office, his daughter, I believe, met with Chelsea Clinton, and poof, everything is gone. Yeah. So if we go back to, again, very simple logic, if elections are selections, at least I know starting in 2002, that means those who run this country, who control it, decide who gets in. If you're not a threat, you can get in, or if you serve a purpose. So if you follow that logic, if we're putting focus on this election, one argument is when after I started sharing my stuff, and I was the first one who did the analysis of Michigan, which went viral, where I showed the entire Michigan analysis, right? Right after that is when Mark Meadows from the White House calls me. All right, I was teaching a class and Mark calls me right after. And I go, Mark, how can I help you? He goes, what can we do to help you? I said, I need data. Give me data because I can show everything. That was on November 7th, I think on a Saturday, if I remember. Sunday, nothing. Monday, nothing. Then Ronna McDaniel's office called me saying, we want to help you. This is the RNC. So here's the White House RNC. I said, give me data. They said, okay, Dr. Shiva, we're going to be in front of the servers tomorrow. We're going to get you all the data. That went on. Then still nothing. That Saturday, the Thursday or the Saturday of that week, Eric Trump reached out to me. Okay, he messaged me. And I said, Eric, look, I said, I don't believe anyone wants to help your father because everyone's dilly-dallying on giving me data. He goes, no, talk to our attorney at the Trump campaign. Call him up. He says, I got the data. I said, are you going to give it to me? Nothing. Now you have to understand, up until that, the Trump campaign and the RNC was calling this voter fraud. Then they switched it to call it election fraud. And you can go look at the timing. Well, in those 8 weeks, they raised about $300 million. A lot of money. A lot of money. And go look at the kid who was running Stop the Steal campaign. Just go do the research on him. And you'll find out that this same person was in bed with Karl Rove, was working with John McCain against Ron Paul. Okay. Wow. So when I started adding all this up, I realized this was kabuki theater. That they didn't want to really fight election fraud. They could make money on it. In fact, the more they made election fraud seem so crazy, it would essentially make it in the eyes of the average American. No, it doesn't occur in America. While they were doing wag the dog, in my opinion, we were going after the real crime scene of election fraud, which was these computer algorithms. And if you look at the lawsuits that they filed, Dan, and I helped Sydney with one of them, okay, with Georgia, Lynn Wood called me to help out. Those lawsuits were so poorly written. They were garbage. I mean, you look at my lawsuits, and I'm not a trained lawyer. I could pat myself on the back. There's not spelling mistakes in there. They are done well. I learned a lot about the law. The law is a lot like software programming, believe it or not. There's a lot of logic to it.
Well,
So,
there used to be. Yeah.
well, what I'm trying to say is, I don't believe they wanted to win. I believe they were running kabuki theater, and they brought me in because I was going after the real issue. So you have the obvious establishment and the not so obvious establishment. And in my analysis, in 2008, we had quantitative easing take place in this country, right? What was quantitative easing? It meant we're going to save big businesses who are running their businesses on garbage, basically issuing corporate bonds and keeping interest rates low. So in order to keep those businesses up and suppress small businesses, which were actually the vibrancy of not only this economy, the world economy,
right?
All right, they needed to save them. That's what Obama did. But starting in 2008 up until 2016, what should have happened is that the interest rate should be around 7 to 8% in my view. They've been artificially kept low. How? By slowing the demand for money, by actually suppressing small business growth. Right? Because if you look at many of these large businesses here, they profit from issuing corporate bonds to keep interest rates low. So now, if you go with the central thesis, all elections in the United States are selections, not elections, then we must ask this other question. What about 2016? Was that not also a selection? Maybe they wanted Trump in there. And follow my logic. If we just purely apply logic, Dan, just apply logic. Because if you look globally, the elites needed a shutdown because it's like almost a pot is about to boil over, which is the interest rates, and they need to keep the lid on it. So they had planned a reset. And there's more than, I mean, there's a lot written about this. It's not just me saying this. Right? Because
we've had it on our shows. We've done programs on the Great Reset.
Right. So they wanted this. So now remember, the Great Reset is global. So when you, if you're the architect of this and you're looking around, if you're architecting anything in engineering, you're always looking at where could be the problems. What would be, if you're going to shut down a guy's gym, you're going to shut down his restaurant, you're going to shut down his tire store, you're going to shut down who would be the most defiant against their small businesses being shut down globally? Would it be the Indian working class? No, I don't think so. They don't have weapons. Would it be the Chinese working class? No, they're pretty much slaves. Would it be Australia? Well, all their weapons have been taken away, right? Which group in the world would be the most defiant? It would be the American working class. Why? Because they're armed to the teeth. So if you wanted to pull this Great Reset off, first of all, you use a pandemic as your fear. Okay, that was your lever one. Perhaps Trump was selected. Why? Because fast forward to March of 2020, you're now starting to shut down small businesses, okay? Remember, prior to March of 2020, the 2 years prior, there were protests all over the world. Hong Kong, Chile, Venezuela, which the news no longer covers. Protests against corruption, protests against working class being squeezed. And that was going to come here. So the Great Reset was profoundly valuable, but they needed to make sure that the American working class wouldn't rise up, perhaps even militantly, okay? Well, if Hillary was in office, don't you think most of the working class are pretty conservative? They would have been really upset? Well, think about now Trump in office. Talks a good game, but what happens when he gets into office? Nothing happens to Hillary. In fact, 2 weeks after he gets into office, we see this Q nonsense, which was trust the plan, trust the plan. Remember this? What plan? Trump is a fifth dimensional chess player. Nothing happened, Dan. The American working class was held in abeyance. They were held in abeyance. They sort of let themselves be handcuffed by thinking Trump was going to do something.
Fascinating.
You see what I'm saying? I'm just applying logic. Remember, I gave money to Trump. I supported him. But when I looked at all the way up to January 6th, when I connected all the dots, why did Mark Meadows, why did the RNC, why did Eric Trump reach out to me? They didn't help me during the Elizabeth Warren campaign, but I was over here exposing the real crime scene. They were running a fake election fraud because it made money. It got all the Trumpers excited. Oh yeah, Trump lost. You see, they needed something to keep the Trump base with Trump.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, Dr. Shiva, it worked. To be real honest with you, I gave quite a bit of money to that. And I've questioned something else as well. This whole process has identified who the rebels are. It's identified those of us who stand out as supporting Donald Trump and supporting our Constitution and our way of life. And it's pretty easy now for the other side to be able to identify who we are and go after us personally.
And maybe that was part of the goal. My
Mhm.
point is, if you just take an objective look and you go back to the central thesis that we have selections in America, not elections, then why do we think 2016 was not a selection? Whether Trump was implicitly or explicitly involved, in some ways is irrelevant. The issue at this point is, where are we? We have forced vaccinations coming. We have these mask mandates. We have the fact that small businesses, the American working class, is getting squeezed.
Mhm.
If you look at the RAND report that came out looking at the wages between 71 to 2018, it shows during 1948 to 1971, the American pie, the income grew for everyone equally. Everyone, whether you made $10,000, $50,000, the American pie grew for everyone.
Right.
And why did it grow? Because during the early 1900s, we had bottoms up working class movements in this country. Working people united before the unions, independent, organically bottoms up, which started as early as the mid 1800s. And that powerful American working class movement, which was, by the way, recognized all over the world by May Day. May Day was not a communist movement. It was when American workers were shot in Haymarket for building their own bottoms up movement. In every part of the world, May Day is celebrated in honor of the American workers who fought. Reagan changed it to Law Day, by the way. Okay, interesting. But the point is, the elites do not want us organizing working people, to be particular, independent of any of these political parties. This is their real threat. So as those working class movements came, you will find that that is what put a gun to FDR's head. FDR was a racist, elitist individual. He didn't give a damn about the working people. Because of those uprising of the broad mass of American workers, they gave the 8-hour workday, they gave Medicare, so this was to calm the people down. But starting in 1950, the McCarthy era, the right wing went after, not after communists, that was just a ruse. It was going after the independent organization of American workers, branding anytime people organized, oh, they must be communists. And the left wing took advantage of that because they worked together, and they created their consolidated top-down unions so they could control working people. So the right wing attacks anytime people try to organize, that's communist, that's communist. The left wing consolidates this into unions to control workers' movements. Obvious establishment, not so obvious establishment. So between 1971 to 2018, starting in 1970, the elites came back even harder at working people. They created the Department of Education. They got big pharma, big hospitals together to create centralized healthcare. Everything became centralized. And since 1971, there's two American pies right now. The one which serves the 5% where their incomes grow, the other where the incomes have gone down. So if you look at that other 90, 95%, since 1971, the average today, if you're making $50,000 a year, you should actually be making $120,000 because your wages have actually been suffocated. And that 50 trillion, when you sum it all up, has gone up and over to the other pie, which means, yeah, we have socialism. It's socialism for the wealthy. So what happens is the right wing attacks, oh, we want to stop socialism. And the left wing speaks as though they're for working people. You see? So they got working people in a bind. This is not socialism we're fighting. The right word is fascism.
Yeah.
The right word is the government, left and right, are united with big, large corporations. In this case, big tech, big pharma. That's fascism. Fascism is, if you want to go to the original definition, if you actually want to go read Marx and Engels or Thomas Paine, and everyone should go read all these guys so they don't listen to third-party accounts for them. Marx actually talked about proletarians. Who did he define as proletarians? People actually worked and actually made something, would be the entrepreneur, the innovator. He actually had another term, Dan, he called it lumpen proletarians. Those are the people who lived off others, criminals, right? The people who are the bums, who didn't do anything. The left so-called left, when they talk about workers, they're talking about those people. They've even, in fact, before Engels died, he said the worst people on the planet are Marxists. Okay? So Marx's own colleague, Friedrich Engels, said the worst people in the world are Marxists. Okay? If you actually go read Marx's works, they're more closer to Adam Smith's. Marx actually talks about the destruction of the state. He talks about the ability for an individual to pursue their dreams, and no one should be in their way, decentralization. But what's happened is, because of the power of the historical analysis that guys like Marx and Adam Smith did, they have to use that to flip them on their head. The bottom line is what we have today is the left and the right are against working people. One feigns Marxism, right? Which the right uses to attack, and the left uses to tell people, oh yeah, we're your fighter for workers, right? They're both have, in the last, particularly the last 50 years, the working people have been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So they needed this great reset because small businesses are actually doing well. The interest rate should be 6 to 7%. And in America, I bet you there would have been a revolution if Hillary had been in power. So they were able
fascinating.
They were able to execute the Great Reset. They've kept the interest rates low. They were able to use people like Fauci to promote forced vaccinations, mask mandates, lockdowns. The elites got everything. They got everything they want. And Hillary's free. Not one indictment, not one thing. So what my analysis shows, elections are selections, and 2016 also was a selection. It has to be.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. I agree with you that we're playing this good cop, bad cop false paradigm of the left and the right. In fact, we talked about that earlier. We need to realize we have a common enemy, and that common enemy is what I call the power elite, who are, as you say, it's fascism. It's control from the very top. I think we're heading into a new form of feudalism with the ultra powerful and rich controlling the rest of us, and we're nothing but serfs there to serve the whim of the power elite. And I think also it's pretty obvious that they've openly talked about reducing the world's population by 93%. They see most people as being vermin, being ants or lice or anything else. They don't see us as being creative, a brilliant entity, a creation of God. They see us as being a biological entity, and that's it. I want to hear your response.
Yeah, so Dan, the issue is the analysis, is there. I just shared with you my position on this. The issue is what is to be done. And my whole life has been figuring out what is to be done, given my background. And you can't build a bridge, Dan, without Newton's laws. You can't build an airplane without Bernoulli's principles. You cannot build a transformer without Maxwell's equations. Do you think we're going to be able to build a movement without some equivalent principles, some fundamental engineering science? And that's what I've developed, Dan. So what I realized is that people are not politically, or put it the right way, they do not understand the science of change. And that must be founded in science. So I put together a complete educational curriculum to do that. I used to teach the foundations of systems back at MIT. We used to have a lecture, integrated, where I basically showed the foundations of whether you're looking at your computer as a system, your body as a system, this microphone, anything, are the same foundational principles which come from general systems theory. And then I discovered through my studies of medicine that those same systems theory apply in Eastern medicine. Eastern medical systems are not a medical system, they're a control systems principle. The body has a homeostasis, and you try to achieve it to understanding three fundamental forces: transport, conversion, and storage. Transport are the forces in nature that are involved in motion of anything, information, matter, and energy. Conversion are those forces that are involved in converting one force to another. Digestion, for example, the CPU, cognition, they appear everywhere. And then finally, you have those forces of nature which are involved in the containment, providing structure, okay? Which is called storage. Transport, conversion, storage. Guess what? Truth, freedom, and health are directly founded on those natural principles. Freedom is motion, transport. the ability to move. Conversion relates to the use of the scientific method to get truth, where you take an idea, you apply the scientific method, you get it. And storage is directly related to health, the health of our infrastructure, health of your body. So what I'm doing now, Dan, is we are building a platform, which I want to share with you, with your audience, for truth, freedom, and health, which is founded on, we need education. We need an educational platform, a communicational platform, and a platform for local activism. That's what we created, Dan. And that platform, you know, I used to help the largest Fortune 1000 companies in the world manage all their customer communications through email and social, where we built their platform for 20 years. Well, so it's very easy for me to redirect that, and that's what we're doing. So, but we're not going to win this unless we break people out of the left-right paradigm. So I wanted to play you a video, if you don't mind, and share this with you, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please
let me
do.
play you this, and let me just show you where I have this. So, so if you go to here, DrSHIVAcom, what I want people to do is, let me log out of here. So this was, you know, the personal website that I had that, you know, I put a lot of our blogs, but we've created, so people go to DrSHIVA.com and they click this join button right here, Dan. I'm going to play this video. It's about a couple of minutes, but I think you'll enjoy it. Let me make this a little bit bigger, but it tells you where I'm coming from.
We have allowed our country to be taken over from within.
Let me stop this, Dan, 1 second. And what I want to do is, I want to play the sound so you can hear it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
1 second.
Deep down inside them.
I'm going to start the share again, because I think there's a switch here where I can share the sound. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to play this again. Let me go here. So this is basically, to everyone listening, you can go to DrSHIVA.com if you can plug this.
We have allowed
DrSHIVA.com/join, okay? And on this site, it's called Join Dr. Shiva Truth, Freedom, and Health. And it basically says, welcome to DrSHIVA, the revolutionary platform being developed by Dr. Shiva, the man who invented email. This platform provides foundational educational curriculum, innovative tools to empower you to be a force to deliver real solutions to affect truth, freedom, and health in your community. And this is really sort of the video which summarizes. Let me play this out.
Okay.
We have allowed our country to be taken over from within, and the end goal is you will have a homogenized world where we will become slaves, because there is a condition among the elites that really thinks they're better than you, deep down inside them, that you don't deserve the freedoms you have. They don't. This reality is what people need to wake up to, and we need to all unite working people. There's only one movement that can do that. And that is the movement that we started creating here in Massachusetts, the movement for truth, freedom, and health. Look, I've been a student of politics since I was a 4-year-old kid, studying revolutionary movements, left wing, right wing. There's a physics, there's a nuclear science to destroying the establishment. To build a bridge, you need to understand Newton's equation. You need to understand the laws of gravity. You need to understand Poisson's ratio. There is a way to build a revolution, and that's why I put this together. My goal is to train an army of truth, freedom, and health leaders. We don't need followers like social media. We need leaders, but they need training, because the educational system does not teach them history, nothing. So in 3 hours, that's what I've started doing. That's the solution. We got to train people. First, with understanding what a system is. The second is understanding the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Freedom is the ability to move freely, communicate freely, right? Talk freely. Without freedom, you cannot convert ideas, hypothesis into truth, which is science. And without freedom, you can't really get to truth. And without truth, you make up fake problems and fake solutions, which means you destroy our health. And without health, which is the infrastructure of us and our body, you can't fight for freedom. Third concept is it has to be bottoms up. Working people, people who work uniting. And what the right wing has done is whenever you say working people unite, that must be communist. Meanwhile, they've let the Democrats run unions, which suppress workers, completely corrupt. But when you look at the arc of American history, it's been when working people came up. We need to go local. Every solution I'm coming up with as a part of this movement, we're giving the science, which is the truth, and then we tell people what they can do on the ground. Like with election fraud, you don't need to wait for some lawyer. Our goal is to train people, Dave, to go local, to go local, to go local, fight locally. Forget lawyers, Forget politicians, forget celebrities. You got to learn politics, and there is a science to it. They lock us down, we should be ready to shut them down. And the fourth part of this principle is a not so obvious establishment. So when you look at a system, there's always something that disturbs you from getting to your goal. Well, the biggest disturbance is a not so obvious establishment, which are those people who claim they're for you, on the left and the right. The Al Sharptons who tell black people I'm for you, the Tucker Carlsons. Do you think any true anti-establishment person will ever be on Fox or CNN? I don't think so. They both mislead working people back into the establishment. Without this solid understanding of political physics and theory, you're screwed. You're going to follow on the left wing, Bernie Sanders. Oh, he said something, or Robert Kennedy, scumbags. Or you're going to follow, some right-wing talk show host. They're not going to lead us to liberation. It's us. And that political physics, it's a nuclear science of change. Bottoms up. We have to organize to understand that there is people who talk a good game and then look at what they actually do, left and right. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity may say some good things, but I don't see the urgency in his voice to get something done, and it can only come when you weaponize yourself with the right knowledge. You need to be able to identify a rat. Christ didn't go after the Romans, right? It was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who screwed him up. His own quote-unquote people. And that's where we're at. So these four concepts I've built into a curriculum. People can go to DrSHIVAcom, and it's an educational program. We need to train people in political theory. You need to have physics, and I've created that curriculum. People need to get educated. We need to get educated fast. And within a half an hour, I can teach people. 2 years of MIT control systems, I teach people those concepts. Then I apply it, anyone can understand it. And then you say, oh, I got to build a bottoms-up movement. They have to get politically astute, and then they have to go locally and act, not sit there on social media. They have to act locally, defy locally, do civil obedience locally, but with knowledge on how to build a movement. The Senate campaign's expanded to the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health, and they can find it on V as in Victor, A, Shiva, DrSHIVAcom, so people can sign in. They can get access to a bunch of videos. If they want to take a course and become a Truth, Freedom, and Health leader, I offer a full scholarship there, but we want people to make a commitment that they'll study, that they'll get certified, that they'll go do activities on the ground. So go to VA-SHIVA, Victory America Shiva, VASHIVA.com.
So Dan, that is what, we have to take action, Dan, and it's going to come through, I think the analysis we can do all day long, but it's actually going to come, as I've shared here, to actually do the education, because that's what's missing. The American educational system has basically made people pretty, unfortunately, unaware of what's going on. So we do is, Dan, when people come here, people are literally, it's actually a curriculum. It's actually like a scientific curriculum, Dan. People come in, they learn control systems. And if people want to contribute, they can, and we give them various levels of courses. They can actually get certified. We give them a portal where they can understand how these same systems principles apply to their body as a system, and how they can apply these principles. They get the book, etc. There's a science paper, they get access. And then when people log in, Dan, what we're creating literally on this site is where we have right now about 40,000 people in 2 months they've signed up, Dan. People are really, really looking to figure out how they can, forget these politicians, what they can do locally. And it has to happen locally, Dan. The election fraud stuff is not going to happen, at some central level. I mean, I have, fortunately, 2 lawsuits, but when people log in here, Dan, well, what they can do is they can, for example, the vitamin D3 video I did must have gotten like 50 million views, right? YouTube took it down. And now the British Parliament is saying, hey, maybe we should all take vitamin D3, 82% of deaths. But what we're doing, Dan, is, for example, you see this mask card here. People can actually print out these cards. So when we look at the issue of masks, what we're training people is, look, people can hand out these little cards, Dan, in their communities. We've had over about a couple 100,000 printed, where people are printing them on the back of the card. It literally tells people they can hand this out to employees. They can hand this out to parents right here. And if you can see what it says here, it tells people what they can do locally, right? We have a whole bunch of videos where we educate people. When you wear a mask, it increases the temperature on your mouth, reduces increases the acidity, and particularly for kids, how it can affect their oral microbiome. And dentists are reporting explosive amount of dental issues, gum bleeding. And then we say these are the public health implications. And then we drive people over here where they can learn more. Bottom line, Dan, what we're doing is providing people a platform. And this platform not only includes educational tools, but people can also sign in, and then we've created a community here. So unlike WhatsApp and Facebook, there's a whole community here where people are participating now. So these leaders in training, and we've created an equivalent of Facebook, sort of on the quote unquote underground, Dan. So people can literally set up their own Facebook pages and they can communicate. And then there's a bunch of resources here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to share this because the issue is what is to be done. And what is to be done is we need to get people educated. We need to build our own communication platform independent of big tech. That's what this provides. And then when people can act, so they can go print out this card, Dan, and we need to go local. People are printing out these cards and they're giving them to their parents. They're giving them to the local Starbucks, the guy who's wearing the mask. And they're saying, look, you can wear that mask, but just remember, maybe you should ask your employer when your teeth start bleeding, when you start getting gum disease, right? Is your employer going to cover that? So we go bottoms up, Dan. So, and we're doing this on every issue. We're in a situation, Dan, that on the left and the right, people are just manipulated. So you have the Bernie Sanders who takes all these young kids, bring them over there. You have all the other people who follow the right-wing talk show hosts. They're just entertainers. People think they're going to do something. They're not going to do anything. Tucker Carlson's not going to do anything. He watches which way the wind blows. He's more of a master grifter. So we have to peel away all the onion layers and find out who really wants to change the world in a positive way, or is it just entertainment for them? And that's where we're at. There's some people who just want to be entertained, right? And by the way, look, the Democrats need a Trump because then he's their character that they can use to keep the theater going. They don't want us building a bottoms up movement. And this is very hard for people to understand, but I saw it right in front of me. Here, we were screwed in Massachusetts. We started going after the real crime scene. We started exposing Michigan. That's when Mark Meadows calls me. That's when the RNC calls me. And the issue was not for me to help them. The issue was, oh my God, we better bring Shiva under our fold. He can't be a maverick out there, right? That's what it was about.
I'll
and the
tell you
left
what,
does this too.
this is fascinating. You've gone in a totally different direction than what we originally, called you about. But I have to tell you, this is absolutely fascinating because I think intelligent people have always felt like, there's something here going on that we just don't get. And why do we keep going through this kabuki theater? Why does it always end up going back to the same place? And why do we go through all these crazy machinations and then get nowhere? And Thumper and I've talked about that. They say, well, people are saying, well, there's going to be this and this and this is going to happen, but it never happens. It never happens. And all we end up doing is wasting time rather than getting organized. What you're talking about is absolutely fascinating.
We can't wait anymore. We got it. We have to, first of all, take away the rose. Yeah, I had so many stupid people saying, oh my God, Trump's going to do something on January 20th. Something's going to happen. I mean, these people are living in la la land. It's like reality theater has merged into real life. You have to understand, what did Donald Trump want to do before he did his hotels? He wanted to be a Hollywood producer. He wanted to be like running MGM. Okay. So you have to understand that the elites aren't going to do it for us. It is entertainment. It is entertainment. It is entertainment. It is entertainment. And entertainment has merged into one big reality show. So it is entertainment. And Tucker Carlson's entertainment. Robert Kennedy's entertainment. He's not anti-vax, he's pro-vax. And when I got involved in the medical freedom movement, I found out that the medical exemptions were being taken away. He lost in California, he lost in New York. When I got involved in New Jersey, I said, no, we need to build a bottoms up movement. And we scared the hell out of those guys in New Jersey. 5,000 protesters. That's why they stopped it. Kennedy was out there negotiating with the Democrats. They need Robert Kennedy. And I can play you the video. Let me play you. Everyone thinks Robert Kennedy's anti-vax. And when I exposed him, he said, I work for Big Pharma. I work with Bill Gates. This is how evil he is. In the New York Times 4 days ago, You know, when they took him off Instagram, Kabuki Theater, they said, oh, Shiva Ayyadurai should also be taken off. And they lumped me with him. And I said, look, this guy is pro-vaccine. He supported Hillary Clinton. And so when I expose that about him, some people who again, are involved in these movements, if you look, this is Robert F. Kennedy. This is the controlled opposition. Now, no one's going to believe this, but this is what he said, okay? If I told you, Dan, Robert Kennedy was pro-vaccine, what would you say, Dan?
Well, as a matter of fact, I've heard the same thing that everybody else has heard, that he's anti-vax.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, let me play for your audience. Let me again
I
share the screen here. Listen to this. This is word for word. This is out of his own mouth.
Minister Farrakhan has asked me to address the issue of vaccines and African American and vaccine safety. I want to start out by saying this, and I want to say it emphatically. I am pro-vaccine. I have always been fiercely pro-vaccine. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated, and I believe that we ought to have policies that encourage full vaccination for all Americans.
Did you hear that, Dan?
Yep, I sure did.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Let me play it again, okay?
Minister Farrakhan has asked me to address the issue of vaccines and African American and vaccine safety. I want to start out by saying this, and I want to say it emphatically. I am pro-vaccine. I have always been fiercely pro-vaccine. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated, and I believe that we ought to have policies that encourage full vaccination for all Americans.
The other thing, Dan, is he's in the black book with Epstein. Okay, fact. Here he is in the election here raising money for his nephew, who's for vaccine mandates. Okay, and he endorsed Hillary Clinton 3 times, who got about 300 million, the Clinton Global Initiative, 100 to 300 million from the Gates Foundation. So you see, it's Kabuki theater. I did a movie with Robert Kennedy, okay? I hung out with him in Aspen. It's their little clique of liberals. It's his shtick. He was a heroin addict, and now the Kennedy gets to fight for medical freedom. The Kennedy gets to fight for clean water, okay? It is a shtick.
Fascinating.
And this is how people, and Trump had the other shtick, in my view, unfortunately, okay? Why was Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump even in the White House? Who are they? What skill sets do they have? Oh, well, he needed his family in there. I'm sorry. He ran his Trump hotels by finding good people. You're telling me you couldn't find anyone? He had to bring in all the slime balls of the planet? So you have to use Occam's razor, which says, and everything was confusing to me until I put, wait a minute, maybe Trump was part of this. Then everything becomes clear. Until then, everyone's confused. Oh no, Trump's going to do this amazing next move, this amazing next move, and this amazing next move.
And it never happened.
No, the opposite occurred. We're on the road to forced vaccination. The social media companies have gotten even stronger, right? Hillary Clinton, nothing happened to her. That's what happened.
The fact that Trump was the one that was pushing so hard for these vaccines. And now we're seeing a lot of problems with these vaccines, obviously.
Look, the bottom line is there is the theater and there is us. We have to stop watching the theater. And the only way to disconnect is people have to understand political physics. And to do that, you have to educate people. Our goal is in 1 year to educate about 50,000 people through the Truth, Freedom, and Warrior. They have to get educated. They don't have the chops. It's like putting someone in front of a piano and saying, start playing, or giving someone, oh, go wire that guy's house. That's where we're at. We have a lot of people with passion wearing MAGA hats or whatever, on the left and the right. They don't have any skills. And they are perfect fodder for being manipulated either left or right. That's what's actually going on, Dan.
Fascinating.
And until people get this, finally, a lot of my Trump friends are, wow, Shiva, you're right. Oh my God, he conceded 4:30 a.m. the House, right? They voted. And then within 1 hour, yes, I concede. All this lawsuit is just being done to keep the Trump base alive, right? It's like, you got to keep them alive. Okay, Patriot Party, MAGA Party. It's just another money-making scam. It's not real.
And also it's a way to identify who the people are who are willing
Right.
to step forward and in essence represent the resistance.
Right.
It's a way to identify who they want to get rid of.
That's why the only way is education, as my great-grandfather said. My great-grandfather was a poor farmer. He was very frugal with his money, but if anyone in the village needed a book, he would take out as much money and he'd give it to them because he felt education was a key. We have a lot of ignorance right now, and ignorance, as another great individual said, is a source of all suffering. And that's where we're at. We are in prison. We're not going to be saved. There's no Messiah coming to help us. It's us who has to do it. And it's us through education, us through understanding, oh, when a ball falls, that's called gravity. Oh, there's a not so obvious establishment. Oh, there's the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Oh, there's the third principle. You have to build a bottoms-up movement. Without these three principles, Dan, there's going to be nothing. People are just fooling themselves. And I can say that definitively as I can say that you're not going to be able to build a bridge if you don't understand force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
You won't be able to do it. You're just fooling yourself. And enough of the sloganeering. Let's be working people. Yeah.
Let's get it done. Yeah, no, I agree. My background is in architecture.
Well, you know, Dan,
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I have to tell you, you've got me. I'm going to get off. I'm going to sign up right away.
Every Monday evenings I do it. It's a lot of my time, 3 hours, and then we offer. But the thing is, it's perfect timing because I used to teach this course at MIT. I used to teach it to medical people. I've taught it to a lot of people. Anyone can get this. It's 2 years of MIT control systems theory in 1 hour. That's the first hour. The next 2 hours, people understand these three principles, and I pound it into them. And then we give them tools that they can study. They can teach it to others. Without these principles, there will be nothing. You will enter darkness. You have to, the light comes through the light of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, you know, the educational materials here, it's tested. And we have a lot of people wanting, you know, people say, Shiva, how can I help you? People said, you know, I'll give you money to build the attack on Twitter and Facebook. And that's great. People are donating, but I don't feel good taking money unless I can give something back. So the education is what we're giving back. People contribute. And so we have people who are supporters, and then we're giving them a community, Dan, so they don't feel left out, right? And then we have people who want to become warriors, and we have a lot of military people who are very interested because they went to the military. They're very disciplined. They want to learn what the hell's going on. And so we're giving them that theoretical training.
Well, you mentioned too that you're creating new platforms for social media. That's going to be really, really important because we need to have platforms that represent truth. We're running into that all the time. We've had a couple of our programs, YouTube bans us frequently. So.
Well, that's what we're doing, Dan. We're, you know, because I know how to write code, you know, so in this platform, you know, we have our own hosted videos. People can take action. As I mentioned, there's this forum here. It's like WhatsApp or Telegram, but not owned by, you know, it's in our own data center. Okay. Mm-hmm. The movement's data. So for example, people are coming in here and they're starting to, you know, ask, you know, they're starting their own discussion threads. Okay. So what is here? So on the science issue, right? So and this stuff works on your iPhone or your Android device, etc. So people can actually use any of these things to communicate among each other. There's also tools, for example, we've also regionalized things. So we have people in Nebraska. So I'm logged in Massachusetts, but people can also regionally organize, Dan. Mm-hmm. And then we have as I mentioned, the social media tools where people can actually, it looks like Facebook, but it's not Facebook, okay? So here's John with his own platform. He can throw up, he can do message, he can get notifications, etc. Okay, etc. And then we also are offering people the capability where we're going to offer it shortly to do texting where the messages, and then we also offer people email. This was a tool that I created for the largest Fortune 1000 companies in the world, Dan. Small businesses like you and others can use it. It has the marketing piece, right? You can do sales, you can do service where you can handle trouble tickets. It has email. So all of these components we put into one platform. So people can get educated, they can use it to support their businesses. And then they can also, and then they have events, and then they have the whole range, and then people can get all the course material right here, Dan. But I'll
tell you what, this is fascinating. You've really Well, first of all, I have to tell you, you were wise to be your own attorney on these lawsuits, because let's face it, how many good attorneys do you know? I don't know many, and it has troubled me a great deal that Rudy Giuliani was Donald Trump's attorney representing him in all this election fraud stuff. I remember Rudy Giuliani after 9/11 talking terror, terror, terror. You know, there's a lot of this stuff. It's very, very troubling.
Rudy Giuliani was making $100,000 a week. It didn't matter whether Donald Trump won or not. He was making $100,000 a week, as I understand. Okay.
Yeah, I believe
My
it.
point is, I mean, Rudy, I mean, they had me in the Arizona hearing. I didn't think they expected me because someone else was about to do it, but that was a big bomb we dropped on Maricopa, if you saw that analysis.
I did. Yeah.
So they didn't expect me to do the real crime scene. They were going to just run a kabuki theater, and they still are.
Wow.
People, the American people, need to wake up and realize, do they want celebrities or do they want change? And they're going to create their own darkness. It's really up to you and everyone listening. What do you want? You know, what I put together, because of the fortune I had to come to this country, to go to MIT, learn, and to be an activist on the ground, is that I've been able to interconnect. You know, you say connecting the dots, those dots, Dan, and that dots results in some educational material and capabilities where people can interconnect so they don't have to feel lonely. By the way, one thing people need to understand is that you don't need a lot of people. You need the right education, right knowledge. Think about this. You know, in the military, there are people called Navy SEALs. One Navy SEAL can do more damage than an army of 10,000, right? Because he's gone through this proper training, the mind training, the body training, but he's got the right education. One nuclear physicist, the knowledge that one nuclear physicist has is equivalent to 1 million people just cut down trees all day, right? To burn. One nuclear physicist has learned how to understands E equals MC squared, understands the laws of nuclear physics, and can smash an atom and create more energy from this much plutonium than 1 billion trees. So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're doing here. That's the conclusion I've come to. It's not quantity, it's quality of people who learn this knowledge and go on the ground in the local communities. Forget mainstream media. Forget ever wanting to be on it. It's going local. Now that requires a shift in mental change. And that is what needs to be done if you want truth, freedom, and health. Otherwise, we're going to be further enslaved. But it's up to us. It's not up to any of these people. It is, we are enslaving ourselves.
I agree. I agree. And think about this, Dr. Shiva, there's 7.5 billion people in the world right now, even a little more than that. Can you imagine if every one of those people were empowered with the kind of understanding and learning that you're talking about? What an incredible place this earth would be.
Yeah, that's what we need, Dan. So the fortunate thing is, Dan, when I created this course material, I did it in 2010 to integrate Eastern and Western medicine. I used to teach it at MIT for 3 hours. Doctors, engineers would show up on one side and all the alternative medicine people. And I would unite them by showing the integration of these scientific principles. And that's what, and I've made it even easier for people to understand since then. So it's like, you know, people donate, they contribute, they get access to the knowledge, they're supporting the infrastructure development. It's like a win-win-win for everyone. That's what we need to do. So through your resources, Dan, get it out, because I have a very clear path how we can actually win. Actually a path. Right now, no one's even offering a path. I have a very clear path. It starts with education, and it starts with education of these principles. Then it begins with building community. And then it begins with people taking action. You can't just be doing all this, not doing something locally. And we're weaponizing people with tools. This little, you know, 3.5 by 2 inch card is a little weapon. You can give this to someone, and instead of, you know, 20% of people are never going to be against masks, 20% will always be for masks. It's a 60%. So we don't need to attack them. We can educate them with this kind of revolutionary scientific knowledge. And by the way, we'll have cards on this, on election integrity, on lockdowns, on digital rights. So these little cards will be like, I don't want to say they're like baseball collector's cards, but people can use these in their communities to educate people. You keep it in your pocket, your hand. This is something every working person can do. You know, look, I'm not here to convince you about masks, but you may want to think about what it's going to do to your teeth. Why don't you go read this and just leave it there? Yeah.
I've been doing the same thing with the Great Barrington Resolution. I had copied a 3-page article about that the folks that did the Barrington Resolution came out with, and there's no question about it. The masks are just a way of controlling people. They have nothing to do with good health. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So Dan, the strategy here is we want the average working person to say, wait a minute, my gums could bleed. I don't have dental insurance. Employer, if you're going to make me do this, I may get a crooked liability personal injury lawyer and come after you. The employer is going to say, oh my God, no, think about what we're doing. The employer may now have to really wake up, because right now, many of these small businesses, oh my God, the government will shut down my business. The employer's got to think about whether his own employees may shut down his business if they get injured for masks, right? So then the employer should go back to the state and say, look, if you're going to force my employees to wear masks, I'm going to make, you need to indemnify me against these kinds of damages. So that's the goal here, to teach people that these masks, forget the freedom issue, but these masks can actually cause you physical harm. And here's something you can do about it. Parents, 30% of parents are pulling their kids out of school. So for them, the parents should say, wait a minute, I pay a lot in property tax here. So a certain percentage you could say is being allocated to school, which I'm no longer using. Well, you should give me a tax credit on that. So we want to make people start fighting locally for their own interests, which we want them to follow their own money. Let's give them some enlightened selfishness here. Like, okay, you're going to make me do this. Well, I want this.
I love it. I love it. People on the show, people contact me and they say, Dan, what do we do? I say, just say no. You've stepped beyond that. I really appreciate what you're saying here. Not only do you say no, then you've got a solution. You're talking about doing things in a positive way that bring truth to the whole process.
And educate people and bring us together, because education will unite people, right? We can start breaking down the left and the right. They want the dialectic stand. They want the mask anti-vax, pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-GMO, anti. They want the dialectic, so they keep the nonprofits alive on both sides. They're all making money, you know, but they don't want to resolve a problem. You have to take a systems approach. Anyway, Dan, I hope that helped. And
well, it does help. Well, and I have to ask this. I have other programs. I'd like to see if I can get you back to do this very presentation on other formats that I have. And one of them is the Red Pill Expo that we're talking about doing at Rapid City, South Dakota in June 4th, 5th, and 6th. There's been conversation about having you as one of our primary speakers there. I hope that you would possibly consider that. I know it has to fit your agenda.
Dan, was this something they also did in like South Carolina last year?
Yeah, well, no, we did it at Jekyll Island, Georgia in the fall.
A friend of mine, Jenny Smith, said you should go, and I think there was some politics there.
Well, what it is G. Edward Griffin is the founder of it. It's through a group, and you need to check this out, called Freedom Force International. I'm a member. I'm one of the council members, but I'm also the event director for the Red Pill Expo. And Ed and I were talking about having you as a speaker just the other day. And I said, well, we're going to be doing an interview, and maybe we can talk about the possibility after you do the interview. So anyway,
sure, let me know when it is. You know, if my intention right now is to find as many people. I believe out of the 80 million people voted for Trump, some of them voted because there was an R next to his name. I believe at least half of those people, like 40 million, this is my estimate, are waking up that all of this stuff is kabuki theater. Yeah. But they do not have the chops that their intuition has. And that's what we've developed here. We want to give them the confidence that, yes, you're right, and this is what needs to be done. It's no longer about waiting and waiting, because, delay is death. Waiting is death. And that's what we did for 4 years. So right now it's time to people act with a very heightened political consciousness. And that's what the training here offers them. And there's nothing like it out there.
Well, you can sign me up. I'm going to go to your website.
Well, just go to BeEnslaved.com/join and sign up, Dan.
Okay, I certainly
let everyone
will.
know. because there is a path forward, and it starts with education, the right education.
Thank you. And I'm
Thanks.
glad we waited. I'm glad we got you on because absolutely fascinating discussion. Thank you again for joining us. And I will talk to you off air about doing another program for me on a different venue.
All right, Dan, be well. Thank you. Best to you and everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.